Michael Cohen is responding to being sued. Donald Trump sued him for $500 million. Can imagine what that feels like. Probably not good. But if you sign a non-disclosure agreement and you're also an attorney who is apparently providing legal services to the former president, and you have ethical duties, well, those ethical duties carry with you beyond the role. And if you sign non-disclosure agreements, you can't breach those just because you're mad at Trump now. And so Trump is saying, we've got some pretty valid claims here. And there are some pretty serious damages from what Michael Cohen has been doing, including leading to an indictment. Remember, Michael Cohen is what many people believe to be the star witness of this prosecution. So there is very likely a possibility that Michael Cohen will be an actual witness in a trial against Trump. Trump will be sitting there at the defendant's table, and Michael Cohen comes up and testifies and gets cross-examined. And so Trump just sued him for $500 million for civil claims for breaching a non-disclosure agreement and for breaching his ethical duties as Trump's lawyer. Those ethical duties carrying on beyond his disbarment.
There is no such document.
You said you never signed
I never signed an NDA. There was a couple of years back.
Did you sign a confidentiality agreement?
When there was a document series that was going around the Trump org, I never signed it. But more importantly, years ago, Charles Harder had, when I was putting out the book Disloyal, had sent a letter, cease and desist letter, and claimed to have attached this NDA. We had asked for it. It was never attached. It's actually not even part of the complaint. It's also missing.
So you're saying that they are not going to produce any document that has your signature on it saying you wouldn't talk about the conversations that y'all had privately?
Yeah, I don't recall signing any NDA, and I would like to see the document. So far, it has yet to be produced.
Okay, we know that he has a pretty bad history with producing documents. Remember that Robert Costello said that he waived attorney-client privilege and authorized Robert Costello to speak. And he said, I never waived anything. And Robert Costello said, yeah, you did, dum-dum. It's right here. And he pulled the paper out. We played that clip here. So there's a history of this guy not remembering signing things. He didn't remember that he waived privilege. He didn't remember that his lawyer evidently sent a letter to the FEC saying Trump had nothing to do with any of the Stormy Daniels stuff at all. And that now he didn't sign this NDA. Even this CNN woman is not believing him. Are you sure they're not going to produce anything for you? Are you sure about that?
You think Trump is trying to intimidate you or maybe others from coming forward?
Well, that's the whole purpose of this lawsuit. It's to harass and intimidate. It's not just to harass and intimidate me. It's also to put out a message to everyone else that if, in fact, you follow in what Cohen is doing, you too will get a $500 million lawsuit against you, which you're going to have to defend.
Well, did that person also breach their NDA? If they also breached their NDA and if they were also Trump's lawyers and they breached their attorney-client ethical duties, well, yeah, then they'll also get sued. But not just because they're existing. That's not why. They actually have to do something, Michael, which is why you're being sued.
And to be honest with you, defense is expensive.
If in fact are you able to afford a lawsuit like this if it doesn't get tossed out?
Well, the answer is no. However, I was fortunate enough that American Patriots put together a GoFundMe, and it's already, our first goal was to reach $100,000. I think we're already halfway there. And I'll figure out how to make it work with various different law firms in Florida as well as New York, even if that means that I have to start, doing some of the legal work myself.
Don't do that, Michael. Don't.
You represent yourself?
I would not represent myself as the counsel, but I can do certainly a lot of the work.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing over the course, over the last couple of days. I was looking at different.
Yeah, she's been disbarred. She is not believing it either. She says, wait a minute. You're going to do your own legal work? Oh, gosh, you're going to end up in prison, man. Are you sure you want to do that? Weren't you disbarred? Now, before we continue on, this was the clip. Remember this clip? This was the one from Michael Cohen's former attorney, Robert Costello. And he brought this up. This was Michael Cohen's signature. And he said this specifically. Michael Cohen said the following: I didn't sign any documents.
That I waived attorney-client privilege. I'd like to know when, how, where. I don't recall waiving anything, but again, this is I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay, here it is.
He was on another station,
Robert Costello,
denying that he waived the attorney-client privilege. Here it is.
Right there.
In writing. Yeah. And that's his signature on the second page.
Amazing.
So,
That's unbelievable.
I guess he didn't know that, and the district attorney didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I told them, Michael Cohen has been in your office 20 times and twice in the grand jury, and he forgot to tell you that he waived the attorney-client privilege?
Of course. Yeah, he can't remember anything. So in this situation, he's also, no, I don't, non-disclosure agreement, I have no idea what that was at all.
Strategies that I would employ. Am I going to, once I ultimately get the complaint, it still hasn't been served, but once it gets served, then the clock starts running. I can look at maybe doing a Rule 12 or Rule 16 motion and force an immediate deposition. We could file an answer. We can go ahead, make a motion for summary judgment or a dismissal. There's many different strategies, and I'm trying to figure out which one will put me in the best situation and him in the, obviously, the worst.
Given you're a former attorney, what would be the basis for your motion to dismiss?
I don't want to talk about it only because
good call.
I haven't come up with a strategy yet.
Good.
And
yeah.
once I do, I'll come back and I'll let you know.
Yeah,
So
let us know.
why talk about it publicly if
Definitely.
you haven't come up with a strategy yet?
Well, I'm not the one who came up. I was sitting in my room watching television when my phone started to blow up, telling me that Donald just signed a $500 million lawsuit. He just filed a $500 million lawsuit against you.
Yeah, that
Do you have a
sucks.
comment? I said, he did what?
Yeah,
That's
what?
how you found out
Yeah.
from reporters.
Yeah.
When the Trump campaign and Trump world found out that you were coming on to talk about this, they sent a statement saying Michael Cohen has zero credibility. Any and all statements made by him about President Trump and others should be disregarded as the rantings of a deeply troubled, jealous, and sad individual who is clearly trying to rehabilitate his image by selling what's left of his soul through lies and deception.
Oh.
What's your response?
Brutal.
I think he's deflecting. I think he's actually referring to himself. He probably had that written while looking at himself in the mirror. I heard the same stupidity when Bob Costello, after he was before the grand jury, came out in front of the gaggle and said basically the same thing. This is Donald Trump's playbook. Use the same lines over and over again. Rat, convicted perjurer, felon, no credibility. This is how Donald Trump plays. And I know the playbook because I wrote part of it. And I know exactly what he's doing in advance. It's very sad to see that this is the language coming from a former president, a guy who's right now allegedly leading the Republican Party, wanting to be the 47th president of the United States. So you see the comments that come out on Truth Social. So before he wants to attack my credibility, so far, everything has turned out to be exactly right. District attorney here in New York, grand jury ended up indicting based upon not just my testimony, but multiple people's testimony.
Can I push on something, though? Because for those of us who have covered Trump and therefore known you for a long time, it's still stunning, even after all these years, to see the disconnect between the two of you. This lawsuits, you filed lawsuits against him that were dismissed. He's now filing a lawsuit against you.
Well, I'm sorry, what case did I file that's just been dismissed?
When you filed the suit against Trump and Barr and just the U.S. generally, when you went back to prison after you wrote
It's on
your book.
appeal. It's on appeal, and it's not dismissed.
She came prepared. She is blasting him right now. You can hear those little subtleties. You know, you've been going at it a long time, like the lawsuit that you just got dismissed, and like, you know, when you went before you went back to prison. Did you hear that? It's like two digs in this. It's like a roundhouse, like wah, boom. She got them both out there, and it's pretty good. Your lawsuit was dismissed right after you went back to prison.
See the disconnect between the two of you. This lawsuits, you filed lawsuits against him that were dismissed. He's now filing a lawsuit against you.
Well, I'm sorry, what case did I file that's just been dismissed?
When you filed the suit against Trump and Barr and just the U.S. generally, when you went back to prison after you wrote
It's on
your book.
appeal. It's on appeal, and it's not dismissed because it lacked veracity. It was dismissed because, based on the Dobbs decision, Bivens was overturned. Had nothing to do, including Judge Lyman's own determination in that decision, was that he agrees 100% that what they did to me, the unconstitutional remand of a United States citizen, by the former Attorney General with, the help of the DOJ, is wrong. However, it was out of his hands because of the Bivens decision.
Okay, but that was because you wrote your book. We'll let that legal process play out. But my point is, how did this relationship between the two of you go from what it once was to the point where it is now?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, unfortunately, the last person that's in Donald Trump's ear controls his brain. And somebody sat there whispering into his ear that we need to make Michael Cohen into the scapegoat. And when I ultimately realized, for example, when Bob Costello was trying to become part of my legal defense team after the raid on my home, the hotel, and so on, I realized that I'm going to be Donald's scapegoat, and I would never allow history to remember me as Donald Trump's, as responsible for Donald Trump's dirty deeds. It wasn't going to happen.
My last question, this lawsuit references the books, the podcasts, your public appearances. When I read the transcript of when Trump was arrested, the judge himself was also concerned about not just what Trump is saying on Truth Social, but witnesses.
No, because nothing that I've come on television and talked about references any of the conversations or any of the information that either I discussed with the grand jury or the district attorney.
Michael Cohen, we'll see what your next step is in this lawsuit. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good to see you.
Brutal, absolutely brutal interview. And I think he is freaked out. Watching that, I think he's legitimately freaked out, and he should be, because I think he's in pretty serious legal peril. If he had those documents signed and Trump is executing this, I think that Trump may have some good basis to file this claim, and he probably has the documents. You got to imagine that an organization like that keeps that stuff, takes it pretty seriously, all of the non-disclosure agreements, and he is going to be a man without a place to go. He's going to be a man without a home. The left has taken advantage of him. They used him as this useful idiot for a long period of time. I think he'll still be a useful idiot, especially in this prosecution. But he is just one piece of a much bigger operation, I think, which is to get Donald Trump. And as soon as he becomes no longer useful, then he'll be thrown away like the rest of the people who are no longer useful to that part of the aisle. And if Donald Trump, or when Donald Trump is the nominee and perhaps the next president, you got to imagine Michael Cohen is not looking forward to that.